Well, hello there. I'm Gemini.
Justin.
That voice you just heard, that's the last thing three friends experienced before they ran for their lives. It's a sound that hints at something out there in the dark, something that watches, that waits, and somehow already knows you. This is the story of the voice that knew their names.
You know, every story like this seems to start out so normal, almost peaceful. In this case, it was a camping trip. Just three good friends looking to get away from the city for a bit, spend some time in a forest they thought they knew. But the woods, well, they have secrets, and this particular forest was about to share one of its darkest.
So let's meet the guys at the center of this thing. We've got Marcus Webb, a 28-year-old construction worker, and his two best friends, Darnell Coper and Justin Frazier, all from Savannah, Georgia. And this is important. These weren't ghost hunters or thrill seekers. They were just regular guys. And that's what makes what happened to them so damn terrifying.
The plan was simple. July of 2020, a 3-night trip to the Chattahoochee-Oconee National Forest. Marcus actually picked the spot, right near the Tallulah River, because he'd been there twice before. This wasn't some random place in the woods. He knew it. He felt comfortable there, safe even. And that sense of safety, that was the very first thing the forest was going to strip away.
The first night was, well, perfect. They grilled burgers, had a few drinks, had some music playing while the sun went down. It was everything a camping trip is supposed to be. But as the fire burned down to just glowing embers and that deep, profound quiet of the woods set in, something else woke up, and that peaceful calm was about to be shattered.
So picture it. It's almost midnight. Darnell and Justin are already crashed out in their tents. The music's off. Marcus Webb is just sitting there by himself, next to the dying fire, soaking in that total silence you only get deep in the woods. It's a peaceful moment. He thinks he's completely alone. He's wrong.
And that's when he hears it. Coming from about 100 yards away, out of that solid wall of blackness between the trees, a voice. It wasn't a yell and it wasn't a whisper. He said it was just perfectly clear, calm, and totally human. And it said his name, just once. Marcus. Can you even imagine the shock? The absolute violation of that silence?
He just freezes. Every single nerve is on fire. He calls out, hello? But gets nothing back but crickets. He scrambles to wake up Darnell, trying to explain what he just heard. But all he gets is a sleepy, rational response. Dude, it was just your imagination. The woods play tricks on you at night. And just like that, Marcus is left alone with his fear, sitting up with his back to the fire, just staring into the darkness until 3 a.m.
The next day, under the bright sun, everything feels normal again. They go hiking, they go swimming. The memory of the voice starts to feel kind of silly. Maybe Darnell was right, just a trick of the mind. But night always comes back. And on that second night, Marcus's private little horror show was about to get some new audience members. The pattern was about to repeat.
This time, they're all sound asleep. It's deep into the night, 2:20 a.m. The silence is broken by the sound of a tent zipper being ripped open. It's Darnell. He comes stumbling out, breathing hard, and wakes the other two up in a complete panic. The skeptic from last night? Yeah, he's now the one who's absolutely terrified.
According to Marcus, Darnell's voice was just flat, like all the emotion had been drained right out of him. Total shock. He says, something just said my name, right outside my tent. It said Darnell, clear as you talking to me right now. For Marcus, this was it. Chilling, absolute validation. He wasn't crazy, it was real. And it was back.
The vibe shifted completely. They weren't just guys on a camping trip anymore. Now they felt like intruders in a place that didn't want them there. The three of them, wide awake, just huddled together in the cold around the dead ashes of the fire, staring out at that impenetrable wall of blackness, just listening, waiting.
And then it happened a third time. But this voice was different. They described it as deep, powerful, and worst of all, directionless. It didn't come from the woods in front of them or from behind them. It was just everywhere at once, a sound that you feel more than you hear. And it spoke the last name, Justin. All three of them heard it. The thing in the woods had just taken attendance. It knew every single one of their names.
So, what do you do then, right? You're miles from anywhere, deep in the wilderness, and something out there is calling you out by name. There was no discussion. The decision to run was immediate. What followed was a mad dash for safety, and when they returned, a discovery that was somehow even creepier than the voices. There was no, let's wait till morning. It was just pure adrenaline-fueled terror. They chucked whatever they could grab into the truck in about 8 minutes. Tents, cooler, chairs, most of it got left behind. They didn't care. They peeled out of there, flying down that dark mountain road way too fast, but the only thing that mattered was getting away.
They finally made it to an inn in a nearby town and just waited for the sun to come up. But they had to go back, right? All their gear was still out there. So the next morning, after convincing 2 total strangers from the inn to go with them as backup, they drove back to that campsite. The big question is, what was waiting for them?
At first glance, it looked okay. The abandoned tents were still there. The cooler hadn't been touched. No animal tracks, no footprints, no sign of anyone at all. It was like a ghost town, frozen exactly how they'd left it in their panic. But then, Marcus saw it. One single detail that was impossibly, terrifyingly wrong.
It was his camp chair, the exact one he was sitting in when he heard his name the first time. This was a heavy aluminum chair, okay? The wind did not move this thing, but it had been moved, carried 40 feet away from the campfire, right to the edge of the tree line. And here's the kicker. It was turned around, facing directly into the forest, as if someone or something had pulled up a seat to watch them. A silent observer.
And the story doesn't just end there, because when Marcus tried to report what happened, what he learned from the cops and from his own research just made everything 10 times worse. This wasn't a one-time thing. The voices were a warning and part of a much bigger, much older story. So Marcus actually filed a report with the Rabun County Sheriff's Office. He was expecting them to laugh at him, right? But the officer who took his statement got dead serious. He started asking these really specific questions. And when Marcus asked if anything like this had ever happened before, the officer just gave him this cryptic, chilling warning. You made the right decision leaving when you did.
That non-answer was all Marcus needed. He went home and started digging online, searching for anything similar. And what he found was just staggering. He uncovered 11 different stories from different years, all from people camping in that same national forest. And all of them described the exact same thing. A voice in the dark calling their names.
And here's where it gets really methodical, really creepy. The details across all 11 stories are shockingly consistent. A pattern emerges. The voice only uses first names. It somehow knows the names of every single person in the group. And, this is the most unsettling part, it never says the same name twice. Each person gets called out exactly once. This isn't random, it's a procedure, it's a system.
And that brings us to this final haunting quote from Marcus Webb himself. 4 years on, he's left with this one unshakable truth. Something was in that forest with them, something intelligent, something that knew them. What was it? To this day, Marcus's camp chair sits in his garage, a souvenir from the night an unknown observer apparently invited him to sit and stare into the abyss. So what do you think is out there in those woods? We're going to keep exploring stories that make you question everything, so if you're into that, make sure you like and subscribe. You won't want to miss what's coming next.
You need to understand something. You are never, ever truly alone in the woods. So what we're about to dive into is one of the most genuinely unsettling true stories to ever come out of America's national forests. This is the story of the Hiawatha photographs. Our story kicks off in August of 2023. It's about 4 sisters, Brooke, Cassidy, Lauren, and Paige Dunmore. They'd just lost their mother, and they were, just trying to process it all. This camping trip was supposed to be about healing, about reconnecting with each other in the quiet of nature. And they chose this place, Hiawatha National Forest. You have to picture it. It's this vast, gorgeous, but deeply remote piece of Michigan. It's the kind of place you go to really, truly get away from it all, to feel like you're the only person for miles and miles. And that's exactly what they wanted. When they arrived, everything was perfect. They pulled up to the Hurricane River trailhead, all set for a few days in the backcountry. The weather was beautiful, clear blue sky. It was serene. It is exactly the peaceful start they were hoping for. But that feeling of peace, well, it was about to be completely shattered by a discovery that would twist their trip into an absolute nightmare. And it all started with a simple bag left in the woods. They're only about 2 miles down the trail, just kind of getting into the rhythm of the hike, when Lauren, the youngest sister, sees something. Just off the path, leaning against a birch tree, was this dark green military-style backpack. It just didn't belong there. And here's the first thing that set them on edge. I mean, think about it. In a forest, everything gets covered in, well, forest stuff, right? Leaves, pine needles, dust. But this bag, it was clean, pristine even. It looked like someone had literally just set it down a few moments before they got there. So, against her sister's warnings, Lauren opens it up. And at first, the contents seem pretty normal for a hiker, you know? Water filter, poncho, first aid kit, standard stuff. But then, at the very bottom, she pulls out this large Ziploc bag. And it was just stuffed with photographs. This is it. This is the moment the whole story pivots. Because what they found in that bag, it pointed to something systematic, something patient, and something terrifyingly close. As they start pulling out this stack of 40 or 50 photos, this really disturbing theme starts to emerge. Every single picture was taken at night. You know that creepy green-gray glow from a night vision camera? Yeah, it was all like that. And these weren't pictures of animals or landscapes. They were pictures of campsites. And as they flipped through them, this sick, chilling pattern became obvious. These weren't just random snapshots. This was surveillance. Someone was out there in the dark, methodically stalking campers and taking pictures of them while they slept, totally unaware. It was predatory. They're looking at these pictures of total strangers, their tents just glowing in the dark. And this cold dread is just building with every photo. And then, Cassidy gets to the very last one in the stack. She didn't scream. Her sister said she made this sound they'd never heard before. This choked, horrified gasp. She turned the photo around. It was a picture of the four of them, laughing on the trail. It had been taken from the cover of The Trees just hours earlier, that morning. And in that one instant, it clicked. They weren't just looking at evidence. They were the next targets. I mean, can you even imagine? There was no discussion, no debate. They dropped everything, they grabbed that bag as evidence, and they just ran. What came next was a frantic 12-mile race for their lives back to their car. But the terror here wasn't just a simple chase. It was something way, way more unnerving. As they were running, they could hear movement in the woods, not behind them, beside them, flanking them, on both sides of the trail, just keeping pace. They were being herded. At one point, Cassidy just lets out this sharp, terrified scream. For just a split second, she'd seen it. A figure, crouched low behind a fallen log, maybe 20 feet into the trees, completely still, just watching them go by. It was the first and only time they actually saw one of their stalkers. They finally burst out of the woods into the parking lot, throw themselves into their SUV, slam the locks. As Brooke is fumbling with the keys, her hands shaking, Cassidy looks up. And there, right at the edge of the forest where the trail started, stood two figures, motionless, just watching them. They didn't stop driving until they got to the Alger County Sheriff's Office. And what happened next? Well, it proved that their fear wasn't an overreaction. It was an understatement. The official response was immediate and incredibly serious. As soon as the deputies saw those pictures, they started making calls. Within 40 minutes, you had the Michigan State Police and the U.S. Forest Service law enforcement showing up. The sisters were then questioned for over 2 hours, going over every single detail. The authorities knew this was big. And then they got this chilling validation from the cops. As an investigator walked them out to their car, he gave them that stark warning you see right there. In that moment, law enforcement basically confirmed, without a doubt, that they had been in very real danger. The investigation that followed only deepened the mystery and the profound sense of unease about what's really going on in the Hiawatha National Forest. The forensics report was terrifying all on its own. They found 0 fingerprints on the bag, on the items, or on any of the photos. Everything was wiped clean. This wasn't some random creep. This was methodical. They also figured out the photos documented at least 23 different campsites, likely over years of surveillance. And maybe the most disturbing part? The picture of the sisters was taken less than 30 minutes after they started their hike. They were targeted almost immediately. No suspects were ever identified. No arrests have ever been made. And Brooke Dunmore's words just capture the trauma of it all. They went looking for peace and instead found proof of an active, ongoing threat. And think about it. All those other campers in the photos, they probably went home and never ever knew how close they came to danger. So the case remains open. The backpack and its collection of horrifying photos are sitting in an evidence locker. And it leaves all of us with one deeply unsettling question. Who took those pictures? And are they still out there in those woods right now? The humming came from the dark. What you just heard, that's the beginning of a truly terrifying and still unexplained encounter deep in the American wilderness. Today, we're gonna break down the whole story of what happened when one couple's anniversary trip turned into an absolute nightmare right after they realized they weren't alone. All right, so our story's about Ryan and Deanna Holloway. And you have to understand, these were not rookies. Ryan was a seriously experienced outdoorsman. Deanna was a seasoned camper. They went into this trip prepared for anything. Or so they thought. So let's set the scene. It's September 2022. They're celebrating their 10th anniversary with a 4-day backpacking trip in the huge Hiawatha National Forest. They did everything right, even filed a detailed plan with their family. The first couple of days, absolutely perfect. But on the afternoon of day 2, everything changed. So they're hiking, and all of a sudden, Deanna just freezes. She felt it first. You know that feeling. That primal, chilling sense that you are being watched. She quietly gets Ryan's attention, and when he glances back over his shoulder, his blood just runs cold. About 150 yards back on the trail, there was a figure. It wasn't trying to catch up, it wasn't falling behind. No, it was perfectly, unnaturally mimicking their exact pace. When they slowed down, it slowed down. When they sped up, it sped up. It was just this dark shape in dark clothes playing some kind of silent, methodical game of follow the leader. So Ryan shouts back, trying to break the weird silence. "Everything okay?" he yells. Nothing. No response. A normal hiker would wave, right? Or shout something back. Not this thing. It just stopped, turned, and took one step sideways off the trail and vanished into the woods. This was not normal hiker behavior. This was something else entirely. That night, they set up camp. They build the fire up extra high, trying to tell themselves it was just some strange hiker. But that fear, it just lingered. They had zero cell signal. They were completely, totally on their own. And in the middle of the night, the real terror started. At 1 a.m, Ryan wakes up to a sound. It wasn't an animal, it wasn't the wind, it was humming. A low, tuneless, and very clearly human sound. And get this, it was moving. It was slowly circling their camp just outside the ring of firelight. It was so calm, so casual, like someone just taking a stroll. The normalness of that sound in that place, it was absolutely horrifying. Ryan grabs his knife, scrambles out of the tent, and just starts shouting into the pure darkness. It was a desperate move, trying to sound like he was in control when he felt anything but. "I see you out there. I'm armed. Show yourself right now." His only answer was complete and total silence. The humming cut out instantly. For 10 solid, terrifying minutes, there was nothing. Just the crackle of the fire. And then it started again. The same empty hum, only this time it was farther away, like it was just retreating back into the pitch-black forest. It wasn't scared off. It had just decided the game was over. For now. Shaken and obviously getting no more sleep, they just waited for the sun to come up. As soon as there was enough light, Ryan went to check the area around their camp. He was hoping, praying for a simple explanation. What he found instead was hard proof that whatever was out there in the dark with them was anything but simple. He found them in the soft dirt near the creek, boot prints circling their whole campsite. But it wasn't the fact that someone had been there that was so disturbing. It was the space between the prints. So what did these tracks in the morning light really show them? Okay, so think about this. A normal walking stride for an adult is maybe 2.5 feet. The stride between these prints was nearly 5 feet. 5 feet. Now, to cover that kind of ground, you'd either have to be in a full-on sprint, or you'd have to be impossibly tall. I'm talking well over 8 feet tall. But Ryan and Deanna heard no running, just that slow, casual hum. The physics of it, they were just all wrong. And that was it. That was the last straw. They started packing immediately, cutting their trip short by a whole day. They didn't even talk. They just walked fast with one goal: get to the car. But the forest wasn't quite done with them yet. They were just half a mile from the parking lot. Safety was right there. They could almost see it. And that's when Deanna grabbed Ryan's arm. and she pointed into the trees. It was there, the dark figure. But it wasn't on the trail anymore. It was moving alongside them, deep in the thickest part of the woods, keeping perfect pace with them. And it was making no sound. No snapped twigs, no rustling leaves, just a silent, impossible glide through the forest. They didn't even think, they just ran, a full-out sprint for their lives, bursting out of the woods and into that parking lot. They threw themselves into the car, slammed the locks, hearts pounding. They were safe. But as Ziana looked back through the rear window, that feeling of relief just vanished. The figure had come out of the woods. It was standing at the edge of the tree line, perfectly still, just watching them. It had followed them all the way out. Ryan floored it. He didn't slow down until they hit the bright lights of a gas station miles away. From there, they went straight to the sheriff's office to file a report. They showed the deputy the pictures of those impossible tracks, probably expecting him to think they were crazy. Instead, what he told them was absolutely chilling. The deputy listened to their entire insane story. Then he looked up from his notes and said that they weren't the first. Another couple had reported the exact same thing, being followed and then hearing something circle their camp at night. Suddenly, this mystery got a whole lot bigger. And the details from the official investigation just make things weirder. So after that first report, the sheriff's department did a search and actually found tracks with that same impossible 5-foot stride. But get this, the tracks just stopped. Cold. In the middle of the forest. No road or anything nearby. Ryan also sent his photos to the Arkansas Game and Fish Commission. Their official response? The stride was, quote, inconsistent with any known wildlife. And this wasn't just a one-off thing. By the end of that year, 4 more official reports were filed by other terrified campers in that exact same part of the forest. 4 more encounters with a silent, watching figure that walks with an impossible stride. You know, what haunts Ryan Holloway the most wasn't the fear, but the motive. The thing never seemed aggressive. Its behavior was quiet, methodical, almost scientific. As Ryan put it later, it was as if they were the strange creatures in its world, and it was simply studying them. To this day, the Ouachita Trail figure has never been identified. The tracks lead nowhere, the reports dried up, and the whole thing remains a terrifying mystery. It leaves you with a really unsettling question. What is watching us from the woods? And what does it want? If you want to dive into more stories that lurk just beyond what we know, make sure you like and subscribe. There are some stories you're just not supposed to find. They live in the dark spots on the map, the places you wander into by mistake, places where some things are much, much better left lost. Just let that sink in for a second. It's that dawning, ice-cold realization you have when you're miles from anywhere, deep in the woods. The moment you figure out that the real danger isn't about being locked out, it's about what you've just found locked in. Our story kicks off like so many do, with just one bad decision. We're in June of 2021, in the Shawnee National Forest in southern Illinois. You know, it's a beautiful place. Seems like the perfect spot to just get away from it all. But sometimes, when you get away from it all, you end up finding something you were never, ever meant to see. So, meet our crew. 3 college friends from Southern Illinois University. And you already know this dynamic, right? You've got Tyler, the adventurer, always pushing to see what's over the next ridge. You've got Corey, the navigator, trying his best to keep them all from getting hopelessly lost. And then there's Maya, the rational one, the voice of reason who gets that gut feeling when things are starting to go very, very wrong. The plan was simple enough, right? Stick to the main trails around the Garden of the Gods area. But Tyler, of course, he wanted something more. He wanted a real adventure, a spot so secluded no one else would be there. And he talks them into it. Let's just go off the trail a little bit. Famous last words, huh? That one decision is what changed this from a camping trip into, well, this story. And just look how fast it all unravels. At 3 p.m., they're at the trailhead, everything's great. By 5 p.m., they're way off the beaten path, deep in the unmarked woods. Only 30 minutes later, their lifeline to the modern world, the GPS on their phones, is completely gone. They are officially lost. And then, right as the sun starts to dip and that forest darkness begins to creep in, they spot it. A building. A sign of hope, right? Well, not exactly. This is the point where the feeling of being lost starts to twist into something else. That much scarier feeling, of being watched. Finding a cabin in the middle of nowhere should be a relief, a sign of rescue. But this one, from the very first glance, this place just felt wrong. I mean, think about it. They're miles away from any known road, any power lines, anything. There is zero reason for a cabin to be way out here, and there is absolutely, positively no reason for a light to be on inside. And yet, there it was, a dim, unsteady light flickering through the trees. So, against their better judgment, they creep a little closer. The place is a wreck. The wood is black and rotting away. The windows are boarded up from the inside, covered with old, dirty burlap sacks. And then they see the door. A single door. And on that door were 7 different locks. And this is the detail that just freezes them in their tracks. Padlocks, heavy chain locks, a big deadbolt, the whole 9 yards. But every single one of them was fastened from the outside. Those locks weren't meant to keep people out. They were meant to keep something in. And right as that horrifying thought hits them, they see it. The light inside isn't just a bulb. It moves. A slow, steady glide across the room, as if someone is carrying a lantern or a candle. Something is in there. Something is locked in that cabin, and it's awake. Okay, so what do? They did the only thing they could. They backed away, slowly, quietly. They found a clearing far enough away that they couldn't see the cabin anymore, but they could still feel it. They didn't even risk building a fire. They just sat there in the dark, waiting for sunrise. But the night was far from over. It was 3:15 a.m., the witching hour. Maya's the one who hears it first, a snap in the woods that didn't sound like any animal she'd ever heard. She wakes up Tyler and Corey, and their hearts are just pounding in the dead silence of the forest. Tyler grabs a flashlight, his hand shaking, and sweeps the beam into the trees. And there it was, not even 20 yards away, right at the edge of the tree line. A figure. It was tall, unnaturally thin, and it was just standing there, perfectly still, watching them. Their survival instincts just take over. Tyler yells out into the darkness. Nothing. The figure doesn't even flinch. Corey grabs the bear horn and lets out this ear-splitting blast that just shatters the silence. Now, any animal, any person would jump or run, but this thing, it didn't. It just slowly, deliberately, turned its head. And then it walked calmly back into the pitch-black forest and was gone. Yeah, nobody slept after that. They just sat there, flashlights pointed at the darkness until the first hint of morning light, and then they ran. This should be the part where the nightmare ends, where they get back to the real world and everything makes sense again. But it's not. They didn't even think. They just picked a direction, west, following the sun, and pushed through the forest for 3 solid hours. It was a frantic, desperate scramble until they finally stumbled onto an old service road that led them back to their car. The only thing on their minds was getting out and telling somebody what they saw. So they drive straight to the Pope County Sheriff's Office, and they spill the entire story. The cabin, the locks, the figure. The deputy on duty listens, patiently types their coordinates into his computer, and then he turns and gives them the most chillingly simple answer you can imagine. Sorry, we don't have anything registered out there. No cabin should be at those coordinates. A week goes by, and a park ranger actually goes out to the exact spot. And sure enough, he finds where they camped. He finds their footprints. But the cabin? There was absolutely nothing. No sign of structure had ever been there. No foundation, no old rotted wood, not even a single rusty nail in the dirt. It was just gone. Now, the official story became, well, they were lost, they were scared, their minds played tricks on them. Easy to say, right? But Maya, the rational one, she just couldn't let it go. It felt too real. So she started digging through old historical records, and that's when she found the final, impossible piece of the puzzle. It turns out, according to the Illinois Historic Preservation Agency, a cabin did exist in that exact area a long time ago. An old hermit lived out there, but he was removed from the property, and the cabin was officially demolished in 1987. 34 years before 3 college students saw a light moving around inside of it. And really, this quote from Maya says it all. She's a logical person. She doesn't believe in ghosts, but she has absolutely no explanation for what happened that night. None. And she admits she probably never will. She went into those woods a skeptic, and came out with a memory that completely breaks reality. So what did they see? A ghost cabin? Some kind of weird time slip? Or is there something else living out there in the deep parts of the forest, locked away in a place that only shows itself when you've wandered too far off the path? Some questions just don't have easy answers. If you found this story as unsettling as I did, and you want to dive into more mysteries like it, make sure you like this explainer and subscribe for more.
Well, hello there. I'm Gemini. Someone is outside.
The only sound is breathing, slow and way too close. Now, to understand the pure terror of that moment, we actually have to go back 24 hours, back to the start of what was supposed to be a completely ordinary, peaceful camping trip. So, let's meet our protagonist. This is Jake Merritt. He's 34, and he's not some rookie. This guy is an experienced hiker, completely comfortable out in the wilderness by himself. For this trip, back in October of 2019, he picked a place he knew well, the Hoh River Trail in Washington's beautiful Olympic National Forest. The plan was simple, something he'd done a dozen times before. Just 3 days alone with nature. And you know what? That first day was exactly what he wanted. It was perfect. The air was crisp, the woods were quiet. He hiked in, found a great spot, set up his camp, and just relaxed. He fell asleep to the normal, gentle sounds of the forest. Everything was calm. Everything was exactly as it should be.
And then, at precisely 2:47 in the morning, his eyes snapped open. And here's the really creepy part. It wasn't a sound that woke him up. It was the complete and total lack of sound.
Think about it for a second. The forest is never ever truly silent, right? There's always something. You've got crickets chirping, maybe an owl in a distance, the wind moving through the leaves, the sound of a river. It's like a constant living hum.
But that night, all of it was gone. The entire symphony of the forest had just stopped. It was this heavy, profound quiet that just felt deeply, fundamentally wrong.
There was just nothing. The silence was so absolute, so suffocating, that the only thing Jake could hear was the frantic thump, thump, thump of his own heart inside his chest. And lying there in the dark, he knew. He knew something was terribly wrong. And that's when the silence finally broke. It started with one single, sharp sound, a twig snapping, and then a footstep, and another. These were slow, heavy, deliberate footsteps, crunching the leaves right outside his tent, just circling him in the pitch black.
Now Jake knew the sounds of the woods. He knew instantly this was not a bear or a deer. See, animal footsteps are kind of random, scattered. But these had a rhythm. They were deliberate, paced, left, right, left, right. It was the unmistakable, terrifying sound of a person.
His throat was dry, but he managed to whisper the words out into the dark. Hello? Who's there? And the response he got was immediate, and honestly more terrifying than any answer could have been. The footsteps just stopped. Dead.
And in that new, heavy silence, a different sound started. It was quiet, it was controlled, and it was right next to his head. It was the sound of breathing. A slow, steady inhale and exhale. Someone was standing just inches away from him, separated by nothing more than a thin piece of nylon.
Jake didn't move a muscle. He just laid there, completely frozen, paralyzed by a kind of fear that's impossible to describe. He didn't dare make a sound. For 4 solid, agonizing hours, he just waited in the dark with that silent presence just outside, praying for the sun to rise.
And finally, the first hint of gray dawn started to light up his tent. He grabbed his camping knife, his knuckles white, and with excruciating slowness, he began to unzip the tent flap, his heart just hammering against his ribs.
And there, in the soft mud, was the proof. A perfect, deep circle of boot prints. And we're not talking about a few, like someone just walked by. No, whoever was out there had walked around and around and around his tent, at least 20 times, in a methodical, predatory loop. But here's the detail that's maybe the most unsettling of all. The tracks, they didn't lead away from the campsite. There was no trail showing someone approaching or leaving. The boot prints went right up to the edge of the dark forest, and they just stopped. They just vanished.
That was it. Pure adrenaline took over. Jake threw his entire camp into his pack in a frantic 11 minutes. He didn't even think about food or water. He just ran. He ran the entire 12 miles back to his truck without stopping, not once, glancing over his shoulder the entire way.
Now, you'd think the story ends there, right? A terrifying close call in the woods. But when Jake finally got home, he found out something that made the whole experience even colder, even more sinister. This wasn't random.
Turns out, his wife Sandra had been worried, and while he was out there, she stumbled across a local news article online. It was an official warning from the park rangers issued just 4 days before Jake even left. It warned hikers about an unknown person who had been spotted watching campers at night in the exact same area.
So this confirmed it all. The reports were real. The official warning had been issued, and Jake had walked right into it completely unaware. And maybe the scariest part? To this day, whoever was out there has never, ever been caught.
And in Jake's own words, this is the thought that still haunts him. Whatever stood outside my tent that night, it wasn't lost, it wasn't confused, it knew exactly what it was doing. That methodical circling, that silent watching, it was all on purpose. Which leaves us with one terrifying unanswered question. Who was the watcher between the trees? If this story gave you the chills, make sure to like and subscribe, because we have a lot more chilling explainers coming your way.